Up next, monitoring health and safety in business aviation by Captain Amrou Bakour. Captain Amrou, take your time, and we are so lucky that today Captain Amrou is with us here in the studio. Thank you.
Hello and good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank AIDA and AsBAA for choosing me for this topic. And basically, I would like to thank you all for having the time today to basically attend our safety forum. Now, I will jump straight to the topic, monitoring health and safety in business aviation. As you all may have seen in the bio earlier, we at AsiaJets operate business jets, and we are basically involving heavily in the business aviation. So when we talk about health and safety in business aviation, this particular topic is very crucial, and it's becoming more and more important to be discussed in this particular pandemic time. During this pandemic time, things has become more, I would say, more severe, or it has elevated from different category to a different category when it comes to the crew mental health and well-being. When we talk about crew safety, and it always comes to us the mental health and stress element that involve all this. Now, as crew are human, they also face all sort of day life stress and so on. They might face anything from physiological stress to panic disorders to anything. It's just like anyone else. But due to the part, or due to the challenges they have in their operation, this risk can get higher and higher. And that's what we always fear of. Unfortunately, the pandemic has added much more crisis into this. During this time, everyone knows, or you heard about airlines actually being hit really bad, or the aviation industry in general. Canceling flights, countries shutting down borders, airports closing, airline running at bare minimums, and same goes to business aviation as well. So if airports are closed, no plane flies, no crew is working, and the whole thing linked to each other. Now, how do we resolve this, or how do we mitigate? The correct word here is mitigate this, and avoid any accident or incident during this time. Now, the major organizations or authorities around the world, such as ICAO, IATA, EASA, FAA, even our Malaysian Civil Aviation, has all come up with multiple guidelines and procedures to all aviation segments. And business aviation is no different. So when we talk about safety in general in aviation, business aviation is actually more profound, or more important for it to follow such a mitigation. So today I'm going to walk you through some of it, and probably it's a good knowledge and good information for some of you, and maybe for those who are listening. Just so you know, in business aviation, all companies has been instructed to come up with a mitigation plan regarding COVID-19. When I say mitigation plan, that means it's in the form of a manual. You have to study, you have to look at some guidelines from different authority, and you have, based on your operation and capacity, number of aircraft, number of crew, the type of passengers, you have to create a mitigation plan. And we at AsiaJet, of course, have our own plan. Now I'm going to walk you through some of those issues. When we talk about COVID crisis and its effect on crew mental health, let me rewind back a bit. Now, Malaysia, it's just same like any other country in the world. Airlines or business aircrafts in Malaysia are same like anywhere else on the world. We were all unprepared for this. No one was prepared for what happened last year. So it caught us by surprise. And therefore, the mitigation plan or the recovery plan, it took some time to develop. And I would say now we are in a mature stage where we can actually mitigate all crises that related to COVID-19. I would just highlight some of the physiological stress that crew might have. Basically, the changes in teamwork, climate. Now you can't operate together. You can't. You need to be separated to different teams and so on. There are multiple change of climate depending on your complexity of your operation. The risk has increased of infection, of getting infected by passengers and so on. So, you have to take extra precautions. Quarantine. Quarantine stress is a totally different topic, which, I can talk about for hours, but I will just touch about it now as a point. And the major one actually is job insecurity. Job insecurity, I'm sure everyone has heard the large numbers, and it goes in the thousands of pilots and cabin crew retrenchment around the world. That has happened in major airline, world-leading airline, as well as in Malaysia, airlines and business operations as well. So that itself has created an extreme stress that many aircrew were not prepared to handle in a very, very short time. Anxiety, external fears, all this has forced the aircrew to basically limit the exercise of their ability to exercise the privilege of their license. I wouldn't list the problems. You can see it there, but it range from losing jobs to losing medical license to being unable to pay your loans for your flying course or training course or whatever. It's a lot. It can lead to multiple issues. Now, what are the guidelines? How do we resolve this, or how do we operate safely and securely within this pandemic time? As I said, there are multiple guidelines issued by many international authorities like the ICAO and IATA and so on. So today I'm going to walk you on some of the practices that we as AsiaJet practice in order to monitor health and safety. Now, when we talk about crew personal health monitoring, you have two types, off-duty and on-duty, during duty. When you are on off-duty, meaning you are at home or you are not on duty, the air crew is always encouraged to exercise their own self precautions, to always monitor their own health, their temperature, any symptoms of COVID. This one is basically primary. Now, in flight, when the crew is on flight duty or during a flight time, we encourage always periodic temperature checks, especially for the long-haul operation. Now, there has been not much of a long-haul operation lately, of course, due to borders closing and so on. But during operation time, the crew are required to check on each other and always report in the event of any symptoms. When we talk about fit for duty, the crew, the word here, the term fit for duty is a term that we always use for aircrew. It actually not been started or developed during this time of COVID. No, it's for ages. the crew is always need to be fit for duty when they come for duty. Fit for duty means you are healthy, you are able to perform your duty, mentally fit, physically fit to fly the aircraft. So some of the points here I must highlight. Basically, the fit for duty will be mandated period of isolation or quarantine related to previous travel duty or so on. In the event the crew is tested positive for COVID-19, regardless whether he has symptoms or not, it's a no-go. You can't report for duty. Even if the crew is experiencing symptoms, suddenly you start to have temperature rising, cough, whatsoever, you must be removed from duty, and I will talk about that shortly. Also, if you have been infected and you've recovered, now, even if you're recovered from COVID-19, there should be a release documents for you to come back on duty. The release documents, basically it comes from Health Authority. In Malaysia, it comes from KKM. And without that documents, you can't come back and operate. At the same time, airlines, some of the big airlines, of course, they have developed occupational health programs whereby they encourage reporting and so on. There are multiple mitigations related to them. Now, the crew or air crew in general and business air crew, business aircraft's crew in particular, are always encouraged to limiting their exposure to any potential infection. When we say limiting, meaning not just in the aircraft or not just when it comes to duty, even when you are at home, even when you are with your family, you have to limit and always be cautious. Who are you seeing? Who are you meeting? And what are you, who are you mixing with? Now, precautions, of course, include respiratory issues, hand washing, of course, continuous hand wash, wearing face mask. Now it becomes very, very common. You can't leave your house without it. Of course, monitoring and recognition symptoms, because sometimes you might not have it, but someone around you might have symptoms. So you need to know when to catch it and trigger it and avoid it. Now, air crew as well are always encouraged to maintain health and clean environment. Now, when we say about health, a healthy and clean environment, meaning when we, healthy is your general health, and clean is basically, it starts from the moment you are in the office or reporting room or meeting room all the way to the aircraft. There are multiple ways to have the cleanliness of the environment, starting from basically disinfection of the aircraft from any viruses. And we, just to add on here, we at AsiaJet, or most of actually the business jet operator in our mitigation plan, we disinfect the aircraft after every flight. And that's part of the mitigation plan, whereby you ensure in the event there are any symptoms or viruses has been spread during the flight, now it's clean for the next passenger who's taking the aircraft. Now, crews should ensure that their immediate working environment is kept clean and regularly sanitized. Of course, if you are working in an office, or if you are working in the cockpit, or if you are working wheresoever, that area, that environment around you need to be clean as well. Air crew uses headset, equipments in the cockpit, all those need to be cleaned and sanitized. Any equipment that you can face to use every day, you need to have it clean and sanitized. Now, of course, we must keep a good attention to equipments in the aircraft, meaning the sanitization liquid sometimes carries a high number of alcohol, where you can't just spray it on electronic equipment in the cockpit. So, of course, there's a guideline on where and how. Now, food handling and hygiene, that's a very, very important point as well. We always practice to separate the meals for the crew. So, meaning the captain does not eat the same meal as the co-pilot and as the cabin crew, simply because of food hygiene. And in the event one of the meal is infected, it does not infect everybody. So that law remain valid. Now, what happened during training time? Air crew are always bound for training. It can be almost every month, sometimes every 3 months, and some trainings are every 6 months. So during this time, a lot of training facilities or training providers, we call them ATOs, approved training providers, has come up with their own mitigation plan. So when they welcome an air crew, there's always a procedure on how do you walk into the building, what happened pre that, when you come in to check in, and what happened during the training. Social distancing, limiting the number per class. Used to be, let's say, if they can welcome 20 people per class, now it's down to 5, 10, depending on the size, and the regulation at that particular point. So there has been a lot of revision and amendments for practical training requirements. So, and that has affected, the flow of training. When air crew used to do a training every 6 months, now due COVID, the training facility is closed. There's no borders you can travel to do training overseas. It's complicated. So all these are to be mitigated during within the training facilities. Now, basically, sorry. Okay. When the crew member are in operation, so if you're flying from point A to point B and you have a layover, that by itself is a risk. So there is a risk plan here to mitigate that during layover by implementing certain rules and guidelines where they have to follow it. During layover, the crew has to maintain high level of personal hygiene. Layover means you're not in the comfort of your house. You're not familiar with the hygiene of your surroundings. You're in a hotel, most probably, so you don't know how clean or how is the disinfection plan for that hotel. So you need to monitor it yourself. You have to maintain a high level of personal hygiene. We encourage them to limit the time of exposure to potential risk area, meaning reduce the time of going out if you can, or be in public areas or public transport and so on, because that might lead to an infection while you are out of home base, meaning you are out of your destination. You have to always maintain physical distancing with others. Of course, wear PPE equipments, masks, carry little sanitizer at all time. This is a primary way of handling this thing during layovers. Now, assuming the crew are on layovers and now they have been in contact with an infected person, what happens? First point, they must notify their company, their airline or their operator immediately. And then once the report is done, they must be removed from duty until certain time. The risk has been assessed, and if it's confirmed the case is positive, then they need to follow the health authority guideline at that position, at that country, at the city, wherever they are. Isolating them from other crew, of course, is an immediate action. And if they are in the event of sharing accommodation or hotels, they need to be removed from the sharing room. So you can't be contacted with anyone. Even, let's assume they can return back in the aircraft, they need to be isolated with a private transport that send them to the aircraft. Their seat need to be isolated, and all crew need to avoid any immediate or direct contact with them. So it's basically the guideline for this. Next. Okay. What happened? How do we limit infections between the flight deck, the cockpit, and the cabin? So we have also created a certain points whereby we try to, in flight, of course, ground on and in flight, we limit cabin crew who are consistently in close contact with the passenger. We encourage them to reduce the number of visits to the flight deck. Why is that so? It's because passengers just boarded the plane from a foreign area, from we don't know from where. Now, they could be a carrier, they could be infected, we don't know. The cabin crew will be immediately in contact with them through, the closest person to communicate with them is the cabin crew. So by limiting the cabin crew from coming much often to the cockpit, in the event of any infections or a virus availability, that itself will limit the virus from spreading to the pilots, to the cockpit. Flight crew members should only leave the flight deck for a short physiological breaks. Yeah, I mean, you know what we are talking about. We should reduce the amount of leaving the cockpit. Try to be always in the cockpit because that's your safe zone, that's your clean area. You have assurance that over there it's clear from any viruses. When it comes to ground crew or ground staff or engineers, they should not actually visit the flight deck unless it's really absolutely necessary. Now, probably, I'm sure most of you are aware when we talk about business aviation, business jet, usually we don't have the restriction between the cockpit and the cabin, the passengers. There's no bulletproof doors, there's no, at most there is a curtain. So it's always accessible. It's basically a very easy to come to the cockpit and chat with the captain, and the captains go back. It's an open area. So that actually will increase the hazards. Therefore, when we created those 3 guidelines, it's working well at the moment, and it's really helping by reducing the risk of any transmission of virus. Also, sometimes there will be a communication requirements between engineers or ground handlers when you are in a different location to pass on certain documents, clearances, flight plans, and so on. Now, that itself also has to be limited, whereby probably the crew or who is in charge of receiving those can receive it outside the aircraft and limit the visit of the ground handler or the engineer to walk into the aircraft. What are some of the actions that we take in case of symptomatic? Now, we have been always talking about, or earlier, about how to avoid being infected. Now, assuming suddenly or unfortunately the aircrew has been confirmed infected. There are 3 elements here, or 3 situations here that we can face, but the general rule is the crew must immediately be relieved from duty. At any time they suffer symptoms, mild or high or whatsoever, at any time they face temperature exceeding 37.5, at any time they feel unwell, they must be immediately relieved from duty. That's a no discussion about it. Now, as I said, we have 3 different scenarios here. The first one is while they are off duty at base, meaning they are at their home base and they're off duty and they are symptomatic. What do? The immediate action is basically they need to consult the local health authority, they need to report that to KKM, they need to seek medical attention, they need to go to their nearest clinic or hospital to report that and follow the procedures. There are procedures starting from COVID test and so on. They should, of course, inform their company. They should not mix with any other crew. They should notify their superior immediately of the progress of their process. So if they have reported to a hospital or a clinic and they got admitted or asked to be admitted and confirmed positive, they need to report that. The second scenario, if this happens on board. Now, it's very highly unlikely that a crew can catch a virus on board while during flight. Reason being is, as I spoke earlier, the disinfection process, the hygiene, the personal hygiene, and so on. So it's quite highly unlikely. Now, assuming that has happened, there is drastic measures a company or the pilots need to take. First of all, we need to understand the risk or the importance of that particular crew. Is he the captain of the plane? If he is the captain, then we need to see whether will it affect the safety of the operation? Will it affect the flight itself or not? Now, if is there a replacement? Can his co-pilot handle and so on? Is there a requirement for a diversion to go somewhere else and land immediately before your destination to resolve this problem? So there are certain procedures. So part of it, also the crew should be isolated from the others. Of course, you must wear a face mask. You need to be isolated to a different seats if possible. Or if it's in the cockpit, then the other crew need to limit their contacts with the person, from physical contacts to any other contacts. And then, of course, the risk assessment of the situation. Discussion will be on the purpose on what could be happen next. As long as it does not affect the safety of the flight, then it should be dealt with upon landing. The third scenario is during layover. If the crew member has any symptoms during layover, as I said earlier, of course he needs to be isolated, and at the same time he needs to contact the local health authority and follow their local procedures. Also, he needs to report to the company in order for the company to keep tracing and tracking of the situation. Yeah, that's most of it. Probably I can hand over to Aida and see if there are any questions.
Thank you very much for asking, ladies and gentlemen. Wow, this is interesting.
Yes.
Okay, we have two questions here. Okay, question number one. While we address the impact of COVID-19, we seem to forget other issues that are synonymous with BA and GA, such as long standby time between flights, ad hoc call to fly, personal problem, non-availability for replacement crew, and etc. How does this impact the safety of BA and GA operation, Captain Amrou?
Well, fantastic question. Thank you for those who asked. But let me just elaborate that safety awareness, it cannot be summarized in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Safety awareness, it's a journey. It's a culture that needs to be discussed, needs to be elaborated. Of course, today when we talk about safety and health of business aviation, I intend to be quickly focused towards the current serious issue. Of course, there are multiple issues now. When we talk about standby time between flights, ad hoc calls to fly, personal problems, non-availability of replacement of crew, these are problems that BA and GA also facing as well. Not replacement crew, for example, matter. I'm going to touch quickly on each one of them due to time. But replacement of crew, for example, it becomes a serious issue lately when much of the operators in BA and GA had to exercise retrenchments or put some of the crew on an unpaid leave exercise. Now, these crew intend to have their own personal problem, their own issues, and when it comes to calling them for replacement or identifying a different person, it definitely impacted the general operation of the company. Non-availability, it's not really a big issue in BA and GA because BA and GA, especially in Malaysia, is not a huge industry. It's a very small industry, and there are most of the time availability for crew. Now, whether you're lucky to call them back or not, that's another story, because they might find alternatives by the time you call them back. So yeah, again, I'm sorry we can't cover everything regarding safety and health in business aviation in a very short time. It all comes down to safety culture.
Yes, yes. But that's interesting. This is the nature of our business. Ad hoc is our daily food.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
ad hoc operation is not a big matter at the moment, because usually BA and GA operation is always ad hoc. It's always
so
on call, on a last minute, you know. So yeah.
That's why it is so privileged. It is so special. Okay, question number 2. As a foreign BA and GA pilot flying in Malaysia, no, you are Malaysian now. What is your take on the overall safety level of Malaysia BA and GA?
Also very nice question. Now, probably I must highlight that Malaysia was one of the first country to implement safety mitigation, and when it comes to BA and GA.
Yes.
Malaysia, I remember very clearly, early on 2020, the CAM of Malaysia was immediately the first to contact us, even though we operate overseas and so on internationally, but CAM was the first to communicate with us and said, guys, create your mitigation issue. Tell us how you're gonna cope with this problem.
They're quite proactive.
Exactly. So they were among the first to participate, to guide. And recently we can see that it's more and more cooperative and I would say more proactive. There's a lot of notes, circulars being sent by them to create awareness, to inform the crew on, be aware of things, maintain your personal health, physical health, and so on. So it's I would say it's among the first, and so far we are doing well, I would say.
Fantastic. So thank you very much, Captain Amrou. That's very, very informative, and that helps to clear the participant who's asking. Before we go to our last program, now this is interesting. We will have our final lucky draw session. So I will pass it back to Anthony in Hong Kong to conduct this session.